When you guys mobilize, you're very effective, particularly if it's an intra-Republican fight. So Pete Hegseth's nomination's in danger. You and Tucker and others, you mobilize, and Pete Hegseth gets confirmed. And it's not just you guys, it's your understanding of the grassroots and how to use social media and mobilization. Where is MAGA on this reconciliation bill? Right now,
It's a great question.
it's the president's biggest domestic focus. There's a lot of tension, right? And a lot of issues to resolve it. And if it goes down, it's almost unimaginable if it goes down. So where is MAGA now? Are you waiting to mobilize? Are you mobilizing and I'm not seeing it? What's happening with that?
Phenomenal question. And the first answer is we first need to see how Congress treats President Trump's budget. There's some elements where I'm not even sure how the base feels. I think I know. And it's not just that I only do a poll on Twitter, like, oh, yes or no, and, to respond. I do that. But again, going back to the Rush thing, I have here in my laptop 50,000 emails a week of how the conservative grassroots feel. And so I scan them. Again, I don't respond to them all. But when I say, hey, email me freedom@charliekirk.com, what do you think about that? All of a sudden, I'm able to upload something that's far more accurate for the conservative grassroots than anything that a pollster could do. Let me break apart the parts of the reconciliation bill from the most favorable, where the base absolutely wants it to, where I think there's some murkiness or some question. No tax on tips. Very, very supportive. No tax on Social Security. I don't know if we're going to get that one if it was proposed. And then no tax on overtime. Those three in particular, the base really gravitated towards.
Yeah, but I would say not just the base, right? Who'd be against those things? Those all sound good.
Totally.
Right?
Huge,
That's easy.
Very popular. Yes. Yeah. No, I just want to kind of go through those.
Yeah, but I think Kamala Harris endorsed some of those, right? Like,
correct. I take
you're right to list those first, but I'm just saying that's not getting to the problem. But keep going.
Yeah, no, I'm going to get to the more sticky stuff, right? Okay. The border stuff is very favorable. More Border Patrol agents, more border funding. Democrats would definitely oppose that, but that is like, hey, we got to get that done. Now we're getting into kind of the murky favorable, but there's going to be a little bit of tension, which is spending cuts. The base overwhelmingly wants spending cuts, but they don't want spending cuts to some of the things that actually might drive down the deficit, and that's where there's some debate. Should we get to $1 trillion defense budget? We don't know, right? Meaning, like, is that where the conservative grassroots stand? I personally think that we need to cut a lot of spending in all departments and all domains. That's going to be a real robust kind of month of, I don't want to say infighting, but back and forth of, hey, if we're serious about curtailing our debt and deficit, are we actually going to go after the Pentagon spending?
But then why aren't you mobilizing on that right now?
Well, to be fair, we're not even sure yet what the final Ways in Committee.
But it's all. I understand, but it's all happening. Like the House is trying to pass a bill next week. So I'm not just asking about you and Turning Point. I'm just saying, like, these are germane right now. State and local.
Yeah, and it's an important question. No, you're right. And the best answer I have is the Hegseth thing was a very focused, very easy rallying cry, because it was a binary yes, no, proceed, do not proceed. With the bill, it starts to get a little bit murky and a little bit wonkier, and that's okay. I'm not even criticizing it. It's just a lot more in the weeds of, well, are we going to raise taxes on the wealthy or not? Now, interestingly, I could tell you that the Bannon wing of the Republican Party, of the kind of conservative movement of MAGA, is very supportive of raising taxes on, quote unquote, the wealthy, 37% to 40%. People on Capitol Hill are incredibly opposed to that idea, actually. And I have them on my show, and they say, no tax increases, no tax increases. I tend to be actually personally less ideological on it, even though, look, the podcast does it very well. You'll make fun of me, Mark, but my taxes would go up. Fine. Okay. I shrug my shoulders. It wouldn't be like a major lifestyle inhibitor if I think we're going to get spending cuts associated with it. So I actually have a non-ideological view on that. And to be honest, I will pay 3% more in taxes if I can go back on a college campus and tell them that we actually raise taxes on the wealthy. Okay, do you understand what that would do for that talking point would shut half these kids up?
Have you taken? I apologize for not knowing. Have you taken that position strongly?
Yes, but I only, the caveat is that there would be for nothing if we don't get equal spending cuts, right? If we're not going to cut spending and we're just going to raise taxes, I think that's self-defeat.
And where do you want to cut the spending besides the defense?
Well, obviously discretionary. So I think in all the departments. So the Medicaid one, I think that
like an across the board cut.
Yes. Well, I think we need to get back to pre-COVID baseline spending, right? So I think that going back to 2019 levels and saying, hey, the new COVID levels are outrageous, they're improper. That could save hundreds of billions of dollars. And then I think we need, and this is where Republicans are running to the hills on the Medicaid thing, right? And so the Medicaid, they say it's cutting Medicaid. It's really getting rid of the federal trigger cap. Again, this is very wonky for your audience, but there's essentially a trigger that if a state can only trigger the federal funds if they spend all of the state Medicaid money, then they get extra federal money.
Right.
And finally, okay, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, the one that I am mobilizing on, and this was one that is not getting a lot of attention, I think we're going to get it done, is the defunding of Planned Parenthood. Now, that one is about $800 million a year. It is not the one that is going to balance the budget, but that one is a pro-life activist and one that, honestly, Planned Parenthood, from a political standpoint, forget on the health standpoint, has been very unkind to our side with advertisements, their C4. And I think it's self-defeating to, fund an organization that obviously I'm ideologically against and also has been rather mean and vicious. But the point is, we have to pick our fights in this reconciliation package.
Right. All right. We'll come back to Planned Parenthood because I want to ask you about that. But so there's lots of other issues in the bill. And as you point out, some are very popular. But if you're serious about deficit reduction, and if you're serious about the books, and if you agree with me and Steve Bannon that the politics of saying there's no magic about what the top rate is for the people who are in the most, it seems like MAGA or you could say, and the president, I think, would be for this based on his public statements, is say, we want to make smart reductions in the Pentagon that the experts say won't hurt our security. We want to go back to pre-COVID spending levels, and so the departments will have to figure out how to accommodate that. We want to do smart things about Medicaid that don't hurt beneficiaries who shouldn't be hurt, and in part, we want to fund that by allowing the top rate to rise. That's a package that I think if you support it and your allies support it and said to the president, is that good with you, would happen. So why isn't that happening? And for people who say, people say this is wonky. This is like our future and our kids' future.
I agree. I could talk about this all day long.
Yeah. Right now that's all happening. And I think if MAGA said whatever else is in this giant bill, we want those provisions, I think he'd have a good chance to pass it and the president would win substantively and politically.
I think that's partially correct. The president is very adamant about a $1 trillion defense budget. To be honest, I need to hear that argument. I really want to sit down and learn, and I haven't done that. And I want to hear from Pete Hegseth and hear from the president. Why do we want to get, or his team, why do you want to get to $1 trillion? Because that really is a major component.
Shouldn't you be doing that now? It's all happening now.
Yes, it is happening. But again, to be fair, this is true. I had Mark Wayne Mullen on the show and Rick Scott on the show, and they don't even half the time know all the details of what's going on. They have contradictory stuff. And so I'm trying to also get my bearings. Does that make sense?
It does.
And they're like, well, in this committee, this is here, and there's no way we'll cut that. And so I'm trying to also find out who is the driving force of this entire thing. It's not totally clear. And I think you're right. It's going to happen gradually and then suddenly.
Yeah.
And I guess my answer is, why are we not mobilizing the way we do with Hegseth? Because I'm not actually as ideological on some of this stuff as I was with Pete, which was a very dramatic red line.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to support the president. I want what's best for the country. There are some red lines that we have as the conservative movement. For example, if we get nothing on the border, I think that would be obvious. And I don't think that's going to happen. That looks like it's going to be a pretty easy win. But then there's the other kind of the second and third issues where, right now, like Senator Johnson has come out this morning and said, I'm not going to support even the form of this reconciliation bill.
Right.
I is like, okay. And then Rand Paul said something the same. So what are we negotiating? Right. Because if they're like the structure itself, and then Rand Paul comes on my show, contrary to Rick Scott, and says, well, if it raises the debt ceiling, I'm not voting for it.
Yeah. All right.
So,
I hear you.
Anyway,
it's complicated. It's not as simple as a up or down confirmation vote, but I still.
But when it gets to those elements, we will be willing to mobilize on things that we preciously care about.